Good morning, everyone, and good afternoon. On behalf of Bryant's Alumni Association, welcome to our final alumni-led webinar of the fall, designed to share professional expertise with members of the Bryant community. My name is Sade Hunt-Chante, class of 2017, and I work in the Alumni and Parent Engagement Office. Today, you will hear from Beth Carter, a well-known presenter, Bryant alumna, professor, certified business executive, business and career coach, and member of the National Alumni Council. Our webinar will be moderated by Marissa Crean, an expert facilitator, Bryant alumna, and the co-vice president of our National Alumni Council. Before we start, let's establish the structure of today's webinar, which will last for 1 hour. All participants are in listen-only mode. However, we encourage you to comment, respond to polls, and ask questions using the question and answer feature located in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. We'll answer all questions at the end of the webinar. After today's presentation, you will receive a survey. Please take a moment to provide feedback. Your comments are valuable as we expand our professional development program. Now I'll turn the program over to Marissa Crean, class of 1981. She is the program lead for the Hartford's Early Career Leadership Development Program and specializes in working with early and mid-career professionals in career management. She has helped build Bryant's strong alumni pipeline at the Hartford through internships and job placements, and has judged for Bryant's IDEA program and has also participated in previous webinars. Marissa, take it away.
Thank you, Sade, and welcome everyone. I am so proud to introduce today's presenter, Beth Carter, who's class of 85 and proud parent of one Bryant alumnus and one current student. Beth is the owner of Carter Consultants Ltd. It's a global executive search firm, and Beth Carter Enterprises, a professional coaching, training, and speaking organization. She's also presented and serves on the Bryant University's Women's Summit Committee. This is her 5th career webinar that she's presenting on, and I'm excited today to get started on understanding generational differences in the workplace. Take it away, Beth.
Oh, thank you, Marissa and Sade. It's a rainy day here in Rhode Island, but I'm very happy to be doing this presentation. I think it's a critical one in today's environment. By 2024, it's projected that about 25% of the workforce will be over the age of 55, and that's compared to 12% in 1994. So we actually have 5 generations in the workplace in some cases. One of the things I do want to point out right from the start is that slide is not moving. Sorry. One of the things I want to point out is that these are a bit of generalizations. Needless to say, not every person in every generation falls into all the different categories. But it is important to understand that diversity can provide benefits as well as conflict. So we're going to kind of cover through all of this today, and please put comments in the comment section or ask questions because it helps us in addressing all your concerns and needs. So each generation also provides different perspectives, and that can lead to misunderstandings and conflict. So today we're going to talk about each generation's attributes and work styles. Of course, communication is really key. We're also going to talk about roadblocks and how to give feedback. So before we really get started, why don't we do a poll? So what is your biggest challenges working with different generations? A is I'm talked down to because I'm younger. I'm annoyed because I hear this is the way it's always been done. C, I feel I'm misunderstood because others stereotype me and my generation. D, I'm intimidated because I'm not as tech savvy as others, and I'm concerned how I will be perceived if I ask for help. And then E is other. If you pick E, please, if you can, put a comment in the comment section. So we'll open the poll up for a minute.
We're collecting yeah, Beth, we're definitely getting responses. It's very interesting to see how it grows. We'll give it a few more seconds and then we'll close it. Quite a few others too, so that should be interesting.
Oh, great.
All right, I'm going to close it now. And Oh, I need to share. There we go. Can you see that, Beth?
No, that's okay. You can tell me.
I can tell you. Okay. So 7% say I'm talked down to because I'm younger. So that's good. That's not that high. A very high number, 26% here. This is the way it's always been done.
I'm not surprised by that too. I do a lot of work for organizations that people start right out of college and then work all the way through till they retire. And I hear this a lot, so I'm not surprised by that number.
Yes, that was 26%. 19%, I feel I am misunderstood because others stereotype me. 15% are intimidated because not as tech savvy as others.
Okay.
And 33% said other.
Did anyone give details on the other?
Let's see if I can, I don't see anything in the chat, and we do have something in the questions box, so let's see how this works out. I can get that open here. They can't really type in, other than going into the question box. Struggle with relating and interacting with other generations, especially those who are younger. Challenge of working between generations in workplace. So just, I think they're, the other is just the challenge of the different generations.
Okay, so we'll address that today, but this gives me a good feel for who's on our call. Okay.
Yeah, and here's a good one from someone in our audience. Struggle with motivating different generations. As an older person, it really is challenging to relate to younger workers. And then another person is, my other is because those other answers were all focused on how younger generations view the issue. So so there, there's like maybe even the way we word our poll answers led someone to perceive it as being very younger motivated as opposed to older motivated. And then,
okay.
yeah, and then the lingo can get confusing. Yes, yes, yes. Okay.
All right. Okay, good. All right, so let's just talk a little bit about the different generations. So as you can see on this slide, it gives the different dates. Again, this is not hard and fast. As an example, it says that the youngest millennial was born in 1996. That's dictated by the Pew Institute. But if you look at other articles and things like that, they might say it's even 1995 or 1994. But the reality is that the millennials are getting up there. They're reaching almost that 40-year mark, which is kind of interesting. And then we have the Zen Gen or the Gen Zs coming into the workplace. So some of them have if they've been graduating from college, they've only been in the workplace about a year. Another interesting thing I found was the traditionalists, which there's probably not as many in the workplace at this point. A lot of them have retired. They're also known as the radio babies and veterans, which I found interesting. So just trying to give a different feel for the way that people are labeled. So here's our traditionalists. They grew up in a state of, in a period of time of economic uncertainty. And if you remember that, in the late 20s, there was the stock market crash and the economy was, if not worse than what we just experienced in 2008, 9, and 10, it was pretty bad. And so they view work as an obligation. They work very hard, duty before fun, which is interesting. They feel like they sacrifice, they pay their dues, and they're very loyal workers. But when you work with these types of people, they need detailed directions and guidance. They adhere to rules. So just to say, hey, what's your thoughts on this? Go ahead and do it is not their style. When it comes to their bosses, they are not prone to confront authority. They really respect their bosses, even if their bosses are younger than them or that they don't necessarily agree with them. They will, in most cases, try to not confront them. The issues with traditionalists is that sometimes when they're working with younger generations, and they don't mean to do this, but they try to parent the younger generations. And they do kind of fall into the category to some extent of what we saw in the poll, that this is the way it's always been done, and why do we need to change it? So kind of same old, same old. They're also big into conformity. They would rather everyone kind of be on an equal playing field, treated the same way, things along those lines. And they have a very defined sense of what's right and wrong. So gray areas for them don't necessarily work so well. And then they do prefer a very hierarchical organizational structure, which again, in a lot of the workplaces today, it's much flatter. They're used to organizations where there might be many, many layers from the bottom person all the way up to the CEO. And the last piece, which again goes back to the economic uncertainty, is that they can be very thrifty. So they're very careful about, you know, every penny that goes out. And that could be even in the workplace as well, meaning that if they are in charge of purchasing things, they'll tend to go the thrifty route versus, you know, spending a lot of money. Then you have our baby boomers. And surprisingly, I wasn't thinking about this until I started researching this, but they're actually our first sandwich generation. So they might be taking care of ailing parents, but then they're also dealing with their children. So that was an interesting statistic that I learned. They view work as an exciting adventure. I think some baby boomers might disagree with that, but they do like to work in teams, but they will only ask for directions when needed. They don't need necessarily a ton of direction, but they will ask for it. Several articles and research that I did classify baby boomers as workaholics. They desire quality over quantity, and they will put in their long hours, including evenings and weekends. They also build their career over the long term, and they're also very loyal to their employer, although I think that's been shaken up since the economy went under a few years back. Again, commitment to quality. They really like doing a good job, so that would explain to some extent why they put in the long hours, because they want to make sure it's, you know, not a poor job. They want to make sure that they've given it their all. They hang tough, and I'm kind of putting my fingers in quotes on that, through difficult work situations and policies. They're very big on finding solutions to problems, so they're kind of like a dog with a bone. They'll keep working at it until they get that solution. They do like being in charge, though, and they respect authority. And the other thing is they love to put their stamp on things. They tend to be very optimistic, and they will maybe question authority. And again, I stress the may question authority. Not like the traditionalists that won't question authority at all, but they may consider questioning authority. So then we get to our Gen X. And an interesting comment about them is that they have what they call a latchkey mentality. So a lot of them may have come home, you know, both parents were working, they may have come home, and that's why they're called a latchkey. So they have this type of mentality. They're very independent, so they tend to like to work alone. They're very, very self-reliant. And for that reason, they tend to be very straightforward, and they tell it like it is. The issue with that is that they can be very skeptical. So if you're working with someone who is a Gen X, you really have to think about, they may push back a little bit. They also prefer high quality end results over quantity, so they're similar in that respect to the baby boomers. They set and meet goals and are very productive. Even though it's really not true that people can multitask, they really try to multitask as best as they can. And they do like balance, the work-life balance, although I'm not sure that really exists in the true sense of the word. But they like the flexible working hours. They were the first ones that probably started thinking about job sharing. They see themselves as free agents and marketable commodities. So, and they're comfortable with authority. So they will question authority, but more importantly, they're not impressed with titles. Titles don't mean a lot to them. They're more interested in the work itself. The other thing is, because they tend to like to work on their own, they hate to be micromanaged, they hate red tape. So for that reason, they don't like a lot of layers. If they can't get their answer from their boss, they don't see the issue about going to the next level. They also are very technically competent. It's really the first generation that has, who's touching technology. They also, which I found interesting, is that they really value ethnic diversity. They want to work with different generations. So if someone is in that category, you know, in that age range, they're probably one of our most diverse in terms of who they want to work with. They view work as a difficult challenge, not a problem, but a challenge. So for that reason, they're very good at engaging in active listening. They'll ask a lot of questions, make sure that they understand what the work is involved, but then get out of their way. They want to work alone, don't bother them, and they'll get their job done. So this millennial actually is my son, Matthew. He graduated from Bryant in May of 2018. He works for Becton Dickinson. Right now he is doing a year in San Diego. So I thought he was a great millennial to talk about. Surprisingly, they work well to workplace structure, challenges, and coaching. So they're very open-minded to feedback, and I think that's very true. Although I have to say, I think millennials can almost be split up. I think the ones that are in their 30s are a bit different than the millennials that are in their 20s. They don't cope well with conflict. They really don't like conflict at all. Needless to say, a lot of people realize that the parents are involved. And that's partly because they had very scheduled childhoods. They were in soccer or dance or scouting or whatever it may be, but they had very structured childhoods. So their parents are very, still very involved. It's not surprising for a parent to call up a company and ask about their children's benefits. Some companies even have bring your parent to work day, and I'm sure some of you are kind of shaking your heads on this. But their parents have been involved from day one. There's actually 3 different types of parents that I want to talk about briefly. The first one is the helicopter parents, which I think most of us have heard that term. They actually hover over their children, but they still give them the leeway to do some things. Then you have the lawnmower parent. So if you think about in the springtime when you make that first cut in your lawn, it's very defined. And that's what a lawnmower parent is. So they really help, they really kind of define their children's life even after they've gotten older. And then the last one, which is a term I just recently learned about, is the snowplow parent. So again, they make that cut into the snow, but they also push other people away so their child can go forward. And I think millennials to some extent get a bad rap because this again is a generalization of a lot of millennials, that they're entitled, they're this, they're that. But the reality is think about who created these children. And it's mostly the baby boomers. So there's a lot of reasons that, I feel bad that the millennials get the reputation that they get. In reality, they're actually extremely bright and very entrepreneurial. A lot of them are starting their own businesses, or if they're in college, they might be doing a side business, or even if they get into a real job, they're doing the same thing. They're also the first generation not to feel safe, and I think that's important to bring up. Matt was in kindergarten when 9/11 happened. Say there's been a lot since then. Their safe haven, meaning their schools, of course, there's been a lot of violence there. So they really don't feel safe. They do, for that reason, and for just the way the generation works, is they want to affect change. And I think we see that in the news a lot. And they really want to make an impact. They take a lot of pride in giving back in terms of either being involved with a nonprofit or a charity or all kinds of things like that. They're very giving generation. They express themselves rather than define themselves through work. So again, they will speak up. There's no doubt about it. So if you're working with a millennial, don't be surprised that they're going to say things that you may not want to hear. But if you take a step back, they might be actually very honest about their opinions, and you need to take that into account. They're very perceptive. They also are very big at multitasking. Let's say you can see that they've got the laptop going, their phone's going, et cetera, et cetera. They want flexibility of their work hours and appearance. So casual Fridays are now casual all week long. Frankly, they don't see the point of working 9 to 5. They would rather work when they feel that they're at their prime, which so that could be that maybe they work for a few hours, you know, they can go to the gym or something, they'll go do that and then come back and work again. So they don't really want to be restricted by the 9 to 5. They love teamwork, and I think that is reflective of a lot of the things they've done over the course of even their childhood. They were on a lot of different teams. They were treated equally on the teams, which can be a good thing, but a bad thing. You know, everyone won an award. So when their grades are not that great, or maybe they're having an issue with a project, it's a problem. So they want. The other thing is they want on-the-job training. They're very big on really trying to learn all the time, which I think is a great attribute to have. So they're constantly wanting to be learning, challenged. They want it fast-paced too. They do not want to sit around. My son will tell me numerous times he's bored. They want to be challenged all the time, and they do want a balance of work-life. I think that's very evident with them. And again, I'll just stress this, they don't cope well with conflict. They have no problems being challenged. They have no problems, you know, receiving coaching, but they really don't like conflict, or better yet, they don't know how to deal with conflict. So if you're working with someone that is, you know, that is a millennial, and they're having, you could tell that they're struggling with conflict, that's a great conversation to have with them. Our last and youngest generation is the Ijen, and I don't have a lot to say about them, only because they've only been in the workforce about a year, maybe 2 at most. And so due to technology, they tend to tune people out. It's very true that their phones, I feel like, are appendage to them. I teach at Bryant, and I have the Ijen in my class, and I do see a difference between them and the millennials. But on the flip side, I also feel that they are very dedicated to what they do. Again, I think they're similar in the millennials, that they like to be challenged, and they like, you know, different projects and keep active. So let's move on. I see that there's some audio issues. Hopefully not everyone's experiencing that. Okay, so we're going to move on to communications. I think the first thing before I move on is to say something about value. Each generation brings value to the table. Each generation, when you were hired because there was value. And I think that value continues, hopefully, for each person that's in the workforce. But with that, you have to have more thoughtful communication. And because we're moving so fast, a lot of times I don't think we really think through what we're going to say. So if you're going to have a difficult conversation with someone, I strongly suggest you practice it and really think through, you know, what you want in the end. It may not necessarily be a win-win, but it shouldn't be a lose-lose either. And remember, you have to work with these people. You know, you can't choose your family members, and in most cases, you can't choose the people you work with. And if there's managers on this call, needless to say, you inherit various employees too. You're not building a team, you're kind of inheriting a team. So you have to work through that as well. So regardless of any type of communications that you work with these people, you have to set clear expectations. So as an example, with the traditionalists, they tend to be, again, more structured and more formal. So they like memos, they like phone calls, or personal conversations. So that may be a hassle for you to do that instead of shooting off a text, but in most cases, that would be the better way to communicate with them. The other thing is, when you communicate with them, is to show appreciation. You know, thank you for doing this. You know, I appreciate that you did that. The traditionalists work very well in that kind of environment. For the baby boomers, they're similar to the traditionalists, but of course they've adapted to email and voicemail. And they ask how to improve. So if you're communicating with them, they may ask questions like, well, how could this be better? And that goes back to their work styles. But again, any type of difficult conversation should be done face-to-face. The third one, the Gen X's, they want direct, immediate response. So email and texting is fine. The only thing is that if you are the manager and you're on this call, on this webinar, you have to think about the response time. I worked with a client in a utility. He brought me in, he was a director, and he had 4 managers underneath him. and I was coaching the four managers. And it came out with each of them that they expected, they thought they had to respond to email, Mike's, who was the director's emails, immediately. And so, and I said, why? I said, well, because when I send Mike an email, he responds within seconds. So there was this thought that you had to respond immediately. So I said, well, is it okay if I talk to Mike about this? And he said, they all said, of course. So I did. I said, Mike, I don't know if you realize this, but the perception is they have to respond to your emails immediately. So they could be in the middle of a project or something, and they feel they have to drop everything and respond to you. And he said, well, I don't want them to think that way. And I said, okay, well, then I think you need to set up some kind of system that if you're communicating with them and you want them to respond immediately, either you put it maybe, which is yelling, I know, but if you put the subject line, the topic in caps, or you say, if it's really important, text me or whatever, but set up some kind of process and procedures on how you communicate. So once they figured, I don't remember what they came up with, or it could be a different color or something like that. I don't remember what they came up with, but the level of response dropped a bit because they realized that certain things, certain emails they could respond to later. So if you're the type that does tend to respond to emails quickly, make sure that your team realizes that they don't necessarily have to respond back as quickly to you. So moving on with the Gen X's too, is they want to be empowered. So again, that goes back to their work style as well. So when you're communicating, with a Gen Xer, they want to be empowered. So they may even make the first move in terms of sending an email or something like that. The Millennials, needless to say, they use cell phones, texting, social media. Nowadays, they're really not the biggest users of Facebook. They tend to focus on Snapchat, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you are not familiar with the three of those, it's not necessarily that you have to use them, but I strongly suggest you go on and just get a feel for it. For those that don't know Twitter, it's 130 characters. Instagram and Snapchat work a little bit differently, but just to get a feel for the way that they communicate. It's very quick. If you've ever seen anyone texting, they move very quickly. They do expect immediate response to some extent. So again, you need to set expectations with them. Also, they like to be praised, which goes back to kind of the way that they were brought up. So praise is very important to them. The other thing I wanted to mention about this too is that this generation really, speed is of the essence, as I said before. So you really have to think about how and the way that they communicate with you. So I was working at a bank doing some trainings, and we were talking about texting. And one woman said, as the manager, that she wants them to text her by a certain time in the morning if they're not coming in. So if they're sick or if there's a traffic situation or whatever, she wants them to text her and let her know. Other managers in the room, these were branch managers, said, I don't want to be texted. It's okay to send me an email and let me know you're going to be late, because I don't want a text message at like 5:30 in the morning or 7 o'clock and I'm trying to get my own kids out the door or whatever. So again, setting those expectations on how you want to communicate is great. The other thing is if anyone's been on a group text, you know how annoying those can be. So I strongly suggest you stay away from those unless it's absolutely necessary. And then again, Gen Z, of course, they also use Instagram and Snapchat like the Millennials do. So now we're getting to the area that's not as fun, and that is about dealing with roadblocks. So let's start with right from the beginning, from when you hire someone. You really should adopt age-neutral hiring practices, and that's hard. I've been an executive recruiter for over 35 years. And that's hard because you might put on your job description, 7 to 12 years of experience or this or that, and it's very hard to figure that out. But really try to do that, because the thing is that you want the best person in the slot. And some older generations feel that they get knocked out because they're too expensive, or they're close to retirement, things along those lines. And so if you can really adopt age-neutral hiring practices, it would be a good idea. Because again, your goal in hiring someone is for someone to work there for a period of time, give back, and of course bring value to the position. So that's really your ultimate goal. The other thing is that you should always offer professional and continuing educational opportunities. All the generations to some extent love to learn. And really what keeps you young is learning. So any way that you can offer continuing education opportunities, even something like this, and look, understanding the different generations, I think is very important. So having a training or a webinar like this and understanding different generations, I think brings a lot of value. Don't assume you already know how to motivate, because that's another piece of this. Every employee, regardless of age, nationality, all kinds of different things, we all are motivated differently. Some want, the power and the ego, so title's very important. Others might want more money. Others might want time off. Others might want other types of recognition. So don't assume that you know how to motivate, and don't lump them by generation. Ask each employee individually. That's your best bet in how to motivate them. Needless to say, you want to evaluate the positives in each generation. So again, you have to treat everyone equally, and not, or I should say, you should treat everyone fairly, not equally. So the thing with that is that as managers, we possibly gravitate towards certain people versus others. Like if we're an extrovert, we might also gravitate to other extroverts, as an example. So it's not necessarily just a generational issue. It's a diversity issue in the sense of trying to figure out, how do I treat everyone fairly? So again, it takes time to really understand each individual and what their wants and needs are and what they bring to the table. There's a lot of subject matter experts regardless of age. And the thing is that you need to look for opportunities to exploit their strengths. So again, either doing a strength finders assessment or sitting down with each individual, really trying to understand their strengths. Now, again, this is a perception thing, because what they think their strengths are, you may disagree, or vice versa. Someone might say, well, I'm not a good writer, but then you read the report and say, wow, you did a really good job on this. So it is perception. And one thing I learned at Bryant when I went there was there's no such thing as reality. Reality is what you perceive. Thus, your perception of life is your reality. So really trying to ferret out who those subject matter experts are. And with that, why not have, intercompany mentorship program? It doesn't necessarily have to be a young person being mentored by an older person. In some cases that would work, but it can also work on the flip side. Younger people can be mentors to older people and really bring a lot of value there too. So really try to keep your mind open to different things. Needless to say, there's other factors, as I already mentioned, that can cause problems in the workplace. Habits is another key one. We have habits that we might be fine for us, but others that work with us don't appreciate them, whatever that may be. The bottom line of the whole thing is that the company you work for has values. You personally have values. It might be honesty, integrity, etc. Some companies have company mission statements as well. That's what the ultimate goal is to really abide by the values of the organization. So having a conversation about the different values that the company has is important. But more importantly, you could do a workshop or a training on identifying their own personal values and having them write their own personal mission statement. It's not an easy exercise. People do struggle with it a bit. But again, it's something to share with others so people understand each other in a different light. Focus on what matters. And I can't stress this enough. It's productivity, it's teamwork, and it's customer service. Let's be honest about it. We're all in customer service, regardless of what our position is. It might be customer service internally, meaning that you have to, like if you're in finance or accounting, you might be providing numbers to another department. That's customer service. If you're providing, dealing with the outside of the company, that's customer service. So we're all in customer service in different facets. So again, we need to stress the fact that we all have to work together. We have to provide the ultimate in customer service. We have to value the organization and value each other. And that's how we get mutual success. Understand also about fear. So fear is hard because the theory is either forget everything and run or face everything and rise. And fear can really, the expression analysis paralysis comes into play. People get fearful about things and they don't know how to express themselves. So again, if you're working with someone that is either intimidated by giving a presentation or doesn't want to ask a question about technology or has to work with someone that's in a different generation, they don't know how to deal with that, you really should focus on, again, what matters, but also understand that, because of fear, they may work or act in a certain way. So as an example, there's an expression called senior shutout. And some seniors, older generations, feel that are they really relevant? What do they bring to the table? Are they redundant? And with that comes resentment sometimes. So again, having those conversations on the front end when a new person joins the team, regardless of what generation it is, and stressing the fact that they all bring value and it is a team environment, hopefully will overcome some of these roadblocks. So the next piece of this is feedback. A lot of people are very concerned about feedback because as soon as they hear the word, they cringe. A lot of companies, of course, do annual reviews. The problem with the annual reviews is the recency effect, which means that you only really remember the most current information. So if you do an annual review, the person may have really exceeded expectations for 9 months, and let's say the last 3 months there's a problem. That's the part that people are going to remember. So you have to think too on how to give feedback to different generations in the right way. So in terms of traditionalists, they kind of think of it as no news is good news. But is that really the most effective? So again, when you're having a conversation with them, you might say, well, how would you like me to give feedback? Some might like it in written form. Some, of course, you should still have a one-to-one conversation, but you might follow up in written form. They may not want feedback, almost on a daily basis, which some of the younger generations may want. Baby boomers, they do expect corporate accomplishments to be acknowledged. So, money, title, recognition, that's very important to them. So when you're giving feedback to them, they're going to want to know, am I getting an increase in salary or a bonus, or when am I due for a promotion? Baby boomers are very interested in that. Gen X is where we start with the continuous and immediate feedback. So how am I doing is a common thought in their heads. They want the freedom, is their best reward meaning some flexibility on how they do their work. Again, keep in mind that they work pretty much independently, so they want the freedom to do that, but they also want to know how they're doing. So you have to really kind of weigh that balance with them. The millennials, they're similar to Gen X because they want immediate rewards and much praise. They forget the rules in terms of feedback, meaning they don't care in how you give it to them in a lot of ways. You can text it, you can email it, you can do face-to-face. And then the Gen Zs, they, again, we still don't know much about how they're gonna want feedback, but the thing with them is that they're very similar to millennials in some respects, but also because they're so tech savvy, they may want feedback in a different way. The thing is that many people are apprehensive about hearing what others have to say. So with that, they kind of shut down. They don't listen well. So if you're that type of person who doesn't really listen well, that's something to practice. It's also good to mention to other people. If you're the one giving the feedback, you may ask that person to reiterate what you've said. So mirroring is a really good way to make sure that everyone's on the same page. But then follow it up in writing. Even though it may be a different generation that doesn't really care about the writing so much, it's always good to have it written up to really understand, so everyone is definitely on the same page. But keep in mind again that each generation handles feedback differently. Before I get to the poll, I just want to say a few more things. So there was a great Harvard Business Review article by Rebecca Knight, and she talks about different things about dealing with different generations. And this is kind of a bit of a recap, but I want to bring it up again. Don't dwell on the differences. If you sat down and wrote down what your team looks like, You could slice and dice them into different groups. One, of course, is generations. One could be gender. It could be they're all from Rhode Island and some are not from Rhode Island. It could be educational. Some have college degrees, some have advanced degrees, some have no degrees. It could be, have certain skill sets. So if you did little circles of each of these different things, you'll find where they intersect. Maybe some people are extroverts, others are introverts, some are task-oriented, some are people-oriented. So it is interesting to focus more on what is different. We tend to focus on what's different about each generation, but what we really should focus on is what the similarities that exist. So your oldest employee on your team and your youngest might actually have some things in common. So it's better to focus on the similarities versus the differences. The other thing is, as I said before, is you work with these people every day. You've got to build collaborative relationships. Really try to understand and appreciate others more. Create opportunities for employees at different generations to interact in both work and non-work related settings. So any kind of team building exercises that you can do, even different types of projects, anything along those lines that you can get different generations to work together. And then afterwards have kind of a regroup, what worked, what didn't work, things like that is critical. Study your employees. And if you're not managing right now, but you're on this call, study even the people on your team. Think about the new people that are coming in. Think about the teams that you interact with or other departments. So again, if you're like in accounting, you're going to interact with maybe the tax department or the finance department. How do those teams work? What works on some departments and doesn't work on others? Again, we mentioned that the millennials, like to give back. So, I know one organization where one of the departments, they have dress down Fridays, like really dress down Jean Fridays, I guess it's called. And to do that, they have to hand in $1. And at the end of a quarter, they donate to a certain organization. Other types of things have been like departments volunteering for Habitat for Humanity, things along those lines. And again, it may work for some people, it may not work for others, but you have to continuously keep coming up with new ideas. Again, all age groups have opportunities to learn from each other. So again, trying to ferret out what their strengths are is really critical for a team to work very cohesively. And then the other thing is not that some people want to share their personal lives, but let's be honest about it. Everyone has a certain kind of life path that they want. Some people want to retire early, some might want to have more education, some are very family oriented, others like to travel, whatever their life plans are. And that again is a great conversation to have with people because again, there might be similarities that can work with that. All right, Marissa, I think we are ready for the next poll.
Sade, are you going to send it off?
Yes, I am when we're ready for the slide.
Oh, just move the slide.
Oop, didn't go.
There you go.
There we go.
There you go.
All right, the poll has been launched. Beth, feel free to take us through it.
Okay, so what can you do now that you've gone through this webinar to improve relations amongst the generations working in your office? Some of you may say A, do nothing, everything is great. And if that's the case, I would love to hear from you. You can email me at ecarter1@bryant.edu is my Bryant email because I am a professor. I would love to hear what you're doing so that if we ever do another webinar on managing different generations, I'd love to hear what other organizations are doing. The next is B, encourage everyone to be better listeners even if they disagree with others. Needless to say, we bring our own thought processes into a conversation. We bring our backstories into a conversation. So really trying to be better listeners. It's a very hard thing because even commercials today on TV are shorter because our attention spans are so short. C, consider training for all members of your team. Again, it could be like awareness training, like this webinar. It could be other types of things like that all members of your team have access to. D is address certain people individually about their behaviors and the way they communicate with you and others. Some people on the team may be very difficult to work with and have definite opinions and perceptions about things and are very hard to bend. Needless to say, they need to, they only can change their behaviors. You can talk to them about it and address it, but it's up to them to change their behaviors. But maybe you can give some suggestions or try to figure out other ways for them to understand that everyone brings value to the organization. And then E, which a lot of you might pick, is not sure yet, but need to create an action plan as soon as possible. The fact that you are on this webinar today might mean that you really want to learn some new ideas, and I hopefully have given you some, on how to create a better work environment regardless of what generations your teammates are on. Are we getting poll responses?
Yes, we are. So at this point, it looks like we've got 57% have said encourage everyone to be better listeners. 35% are considering training for all members of their team. And a couple people have thought about addressing certain people individually about their behaviors, or not sure yet, but need to create an action plan as soon as possible. Nobody said do nothing. Everything is great.
Well, I'll be honest with you, I'm glad to hear that, because again, I was curious what people were doing, but if the fact that they're on this webinar, I'm thinking that that's the reason why they're on this webinar is that they're hoping to get some tips on how to make the environment better. In terms of listening to, I just want to bring this up. I have a great listening exercise I do in some of my trainings. I break people down into pairs, and one person is the first speaker, and then the second person, of course, is the second speaker. So the first speaker speaks for like 90 seconds, and I give them a very broad topic. So last week I was doing this exercise, and I said, talk about your Thanksgiving. So the person just talks straight for 90 seconds. The other person is not allowed to talk. And then after 90 seconds, they switch. And they talked about the fact that it's very difficult. 90 seconds, that's it. And it's still very difficult to do because you're formulating in your head what you want to respond to the person. So you've got that going on. You're thinking about that. The other thing is that let's say someone said, for argument's sake, oh, well, we have this kind of stuffing. All of a sudden, your mind is off on you're creating your own story. Like, oh, stuffing, that sounds really good. Maybe I'll stop at the supermarket tonight and get some stuffing so I can have that before Thanksgiving. I'd really like some stuffing. And all of a sudden, you got your own story going on in your head. So listening is a real art these days, and I think it's very hard because of the fact that we're so bombarded with things, and we're just going. So if you really think that listening is an issue in your organization, try that exercise. It's kind of funny too, because you hear some of the stories after the fact, and the energy in the room is interesting too, because you see people, really try to have good eye contact, nodding in agreement, but they're not allowed to talk. And if you're the type of person who doesn't have good eye contact, by the end of a conversation, you should know the color of the person's eyes. That's another tip I can give you. When you consider training for all members of your team, make sure that whoever the trainer is, or if you do it internally or you have external trainers come in, that it really is very, that maybe there's times where older generations can relate more and then younger generations can relate more, which is very hard in a training, granted, especially if you have, let's say, 20 or 30 people, even if it's a smaller group, because different people are going to react differently and you don't want anyone to feel offended. So make sure that you really understand the materials that are going to be used, and maybe even get some feedback from somebody, somebody older on your team and maybe someone younger on your team before you even do the training. Because needless to say, you want to make it positive, and the more input you can get on that, the better.
I was going to just jump in for a second, Beth. There are a couple of people who had commented and, obviously agreeing with you on the importance of listener skills. And one of our attendees mentioned she was chatting with a woman on a train recently, and that the letters in listen also spell silent. So I think that's pretty neat.
I like that. That's really cool. Well, thank you. Thank you for giving us that. I love that. Okay, good. That's really good. Okay. Anybody else make some interesting comments?
Well, yeah, there was definitely, it's important to really, there are still going to be people who are stuck in their mindset and don't want to hear it. So I do think there's, that bridging the communication barrier, and helping people get used to. I think one of our roadblocks was about change and managing change, and that sounds like somebody who is maybe just a little bit resistant to change
Hmm.
and,
I
and
totally agree with
accepting
you
it.
on that. It's
Yeah.
interesting. I'm doing a 5-week academy for a company, and a couple people mentioned that they have people on their teams that are close to retirement, and I guess there's some kind of retirement app out there, so it can tell you exactly how many days, minutes, seconds
Mm.
till you retire. And so these people are kind of like just they show up every day, but they don't really do anything because they just want to retire, right? And then we have other people who just don't want to work at all. So you have the slackers, as I call them. The thing is that not only are you trying to, provide that customer service and have that collaborative team environment, but I always throw out the question to people, even if they're younger, but like have one foot out the door, is what kind of legacy do you want to leave in this organization? Knowledge transfer these days is really tough. The millennials are known for, although I think this is starting to change, that they potentially jump jobs pretty quickly. But with that, companies lose that knowledge transfer. So if you're close to retirement or thinking of leaving your company or switching departments or whatever, what is that legacy that you want to leave? And I think as managers, one of the greatest, assets that managers have is that they can really help an individual, even if they lose the person, to go to a better opportunity, is that they've made an impact on that person. And I think every generation has that they do have that opportunity to make an impact on someone else in a positive way. So I think that there's a lot of pluses that can be done by that. It just sometimes either we're moving too fast or we don't want to deal with the situation. Most people don't like conflict, and how do we work through that? Are there any other comments before we wrap this up today, Marissa?
No other comments.
Well, I think if anyone again has any questions, you can reach me actually in a lot of different ways. Let me get to that screen. So you can either email me at either of my companies, or as I said, I do have a Bryant email as well, which is ecarter1@bryant.edu. That's my shortest email, but you're more than welcome to email me at either company. You can also follow me on Twitter, or if you want to pick up the phone and talk to me, I'd be more than happy to hear your thoughts and comments on this. So I think we're good, Marissa.
Okay. Let's see. So I think so I'm back on. So on behalf of the Bryant Alumni Association, I'd like to thank Beth for a thought-provoking presentation. Most of all, I want to thank everybody here on the call that joined us today. Our entire webinar series is archived on alumniconnect.bryant.edu webinars. So if you enjoyed this webinar or want to suggest a topic for the future, you'll be getting a survey in your email, and check out bryant.edu/alumni events for other upcoming events, webinars, just opportunities to get together with other alumni. This concludes today's webinar. Thank you and have a great day.